Deep dive on PR Genius.
So you're here because you want to get straight to the good stuff, right? Cut through the fluff, get the knowledge that actually matters. That's what we do. And today, we're taking a deep dive into something really, well, unique. We've got sources all about the Church of the SubGenius and their main text, the Book of the SubGenius.
Right. And what's, immediately kind of striking is that this isn't some dusty old scripture. It's literally compiled from their own zine, The Stark Fist of
Oh,
Removal.
zine, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, think about that. It's like a living document constantly being shaped. It's not what you typically picture for a religious text, even a parody one.
Exactly. And you might see the Book of the SubGenius in a bookstore. Probably over in humor. But here's a fun bit for you listening. Actual SubGenius folks, they apparently make a point of sneaking it onto their religion shelves.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I've heard that. It's all part of the game, isn't it? That playful subversion. And this book, it's been around McGraw-Hill first back in '83, then Fireside picked it up in '87. So it's been out there sowing its particular brand of weirdness for a while.
Definitely. So for anyone maybe not familiar, the Church of the SubGenius, it gets called a parody religion. But wow, is it detailed?
Oh, incredibly so. It's
Yeah.
really built to satirize, more mainstream beliefs. And right at the center, you've got this figure, J.R. Bob Dobbs. And notice the quotes around Bob,
Yeah.
always.
Right, the quotes are key. We got to remember that.
Absolutely deliberate. Something to keep in mind.
And it's not just Bob, is it? I mean, the sources we looked at are just full of these wild stories, gods, conspiracies, the whole shebang.
Totally. What really jumps out, I think, is how they just mash together all sorts of cultural references in their mythology. It's like ancient myths, sci-fi tropes, conspiracy theories, pop culture, everything thrown into a blender.
A cosmic blender, yeah.
So yeah, our mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward. We're going to pull out the key stuff about the Church of the SubGenius just based on the materials provided. Think of this as your quick guide to the world of Bob.
Okay, let's get into the foundations then. It looks like the SubGenius Foundation itself officially started in 1979. There was this pamphlet, The World Ends Tomorrow and You May Die. And the names involved are Ivan Stang and Philo Drummond.
Right, and Dr. X was apparently there at the beginning too, and this is where it gets SubGenius. The church itself claims the real start was way back in 1953.
Oh, okay. Not 79.
Not according to them.
Okay.
1953, that's when J.R. Bob Dobbs supposedly had his big moment, contact with an entity called JHVH1. Let me guess, not your average divine being.
Described as an evil space god.
Yeah, and get this, Bob himself. His background was supposedly as a drilling equipment salesman.
A drilling equipment salesman meets an evil space god on a TV he built himself. Okay, you genuinely cannot make this stuff up.
It's that contrast, right? The totally mundane slammed up against the utterly bizarre. That's their whole style.
And the quotes around Bob, always the quotes. It's like a required part of the name.
Non-negotiable, seems like. And the story just keeps building. There are tales of assassination attempts on Bob by the conspiracy, rival groups. He's apparently died and come back multiple times.
Died and resurrected. Classic.
Exactly. And his wife, Connie, even said in an interview, I think around 2015, that, yeah, he's currently deceased. It's that constant sort of wink towards religious tropes.
Wow. Okay, and then there's Bob's pipe. That's sacred somehow.
Apparently so. And this Tibetan herb he liked, Habafropsipulops, frop for short, supposedly has permanent mind-altering effect.
Frop. Got it. And Connie, his wife. Constance Marsh, Connie Dobbs. She's important too.
Yeah, seems like she's his primary wife and actually a figure of worship for female members, the SubGenie women.
And this is maybe the best part, telling us a lot about their approach. They actively campaigned for Bob Dobbs to be named the #1 phony or fraud of the 20th century in a Time magazine poll.
They did. And they succeeded. They literally lobbied to get him that title. It perfectly shows how they embrace and twist mainstream stuff.
That's brilliant, actually. Okay, so moving away from Bob himself for a sec.
Yeah.
What are the actual beliefs here? What's the core doctrine?
Well, a big one is this idea of Yetinsin. They claim SubGenie are superior mutants, descended from humans breeding with Yetis, or maybe Atlanteans.
Humans and Yetis. Oh.
Yeah. And to even get started, you, the hopeful SubGenius, had to send in money. Originally, it was $35. Now it's more like $50, maybe a bit less if you want to be ordained as a minister.
Right, so you pay the fee, you embrace your inner Yeti.
Yeah.
Then what? What's the goal for you?
The goal is unlocking your abnormality potential.
Right.
This is supposed to be the path to getting Slack and, super important, fighting the conspiracy.
Slack, I saw that mentioned a lot. What is Slack exactly?
And that's the thing. It's central, absolutely core to everything, but it's like deliberately never clearly defined. It's sort of teased out. It's generally described as the state of, total freedom, comfort, no hard work, no obligations, kind of like this natural entitlement that they believe the conspiracy is keeping from everyone. It's interesting for you listening how this vague idea kind of mirrors maybe our own fuzzy desires for a better life while also mocking self-help promises.
So it's like the ultimate state of chill, but nobody can quite pin it down. How do you supposedly get this Slack?
Well, the sources mention things like sex and definitely avoiding work. Anything laborious, basically.
It's the opposite of the Protestant work ethic then.
Pretty much. A direct contrast to a lot of traditional religious ideas about work and, abstinence. And then there's the conspiracy, this shadowy force that's supposedly running everything behind the scenes.
And they turn everyone else into pinks.
Pinks, yeah. That's the term for the oblivious masses, the regular folks who don't know they're being controlled. So you're either trying to get Slack or you're a pink.
Got it. And what about this? Sacred doctrine of irascibility. That sounds flexible.
Yeah, that apparently ties into Bob's supposed ability to time travel because he can zip around time. The doctrine itself isn't set in stone. It can change. It can be, erased.
Huh. So no rigid dogma there.
Not really. It really underlines their rejection of, fixed, unchanging rules. It's all very fluid.
This rabbit hole, man, it just keeps going. So who else is in this SubGenius universe? Is it just Bob and JHVH1? What about other gods or entities?
Oh, no, it's definitely polytheistic. There's a whole cast. Jehovah One is the main deity, the one who supposedly contacted Bob and gave him all this knowledge and power. But then they also include figures like Iris.
Iris, like from Discordianism?
Yeah.
The goddess of chaos.
The very same. They apparently consider her Jehovah One's wife, which, for you trying to grasp the satire, it shows how they just grab bits from different mythologies, kind of like how real religions sometimes absorb local tradition.
Okay. And I saw mentions of elder gods and someone called Yog-Sothoth.
Yeah.
That sounds really familiar. Like Lovecraft?
Straight out of H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, they openly borrow from his cosmic horror stuff. Yog-Sothoth is supposedly the leader of these elder gods who are, dedicated to making humans suffer, though Jehovah One is seen as relatively good compared to them.
Relatively good. High bar.
Right. And then there are the shorter persavs.
Shorter persavs.
Short duration personal saviors.
Oh.
Yeah. This could be like anyone or anything, a person, an object, an idea that feels incredibly important to you right now, but you're actually encouraged to ditch them once the novelty wears off.
So like a disposable guru.
Exactly. A guru with a built-in sell-by date. It's kind of a funny take on how quickly trends and idols change, isn't it? Something for you to maybe think about in our own culture.
Definitely. Okay, let's switch gears to something pretty major in their lore. The end of the world. I kept seeing this thing called X Day. What's the deal there?
Ah, X Day. Yes, that was the big prophecy. July 5th, 1998 at 7 a.m. sharp. That was supposedly when the men from Planet X were going to arrive.
The men from Planet X.
Rawr.
And what was supposed to happen?
The promise, the big payoff for dues-paying SubGenie was something called the Rupture. Basically, they'd be whisked away on spaceships for like an endless party across the galaxy, everyone else. The normals, the pinks.
Let me guess. Not so great for them.
Eternal suffering, apparently. Seems human pain is a big commodity for the SubGenius gods. It's, a classic apocalyptic narrative, just filtered through their very specific, weird lens. For you, it's interesting to see how even parody needs an end times.
July 5th, 1998. Okay, quick calendar check.
Yeah.
Yeah, that day happened. And spoiler alert, no spaceships. What was the explanation for the no-show?
Right, no rupture. And they have, like, a whole collection of fantastic excuses. It's quite creative, actually.
Like what? The space Uber got lost?
Pretty much. Some say Bob himself intervened to save humanity. Others blame the conspiracy for messing with the calendar. My favorite, though, is the idea that maybe Earth was destroyed and we're all actually living on Mars now and just haven't noticed.
We're on Mars. Okay. You really have to admire the commitment to the bit. The refusal to just say, oops, we were wrong.
Totally. It's that dedication to keeping the narrative going that's, well, it's kind of impressive in its own weird way, and hopefully you find that interesting too, just seeing how they operate.
And they still celebrate this non-event, right?
Yeah.
Annually.
They do. They hold X-Day devivals every year around July 5th.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the one in 1998, when the spaceships didn't show, got pretty wild. Reverend Ivan Stang supposedly got stripped, covered in motor oil and feathers, and thrown in a pond.
Wow, sounds messy.
They definitely have a flair for the performative. And yeah, X Day is still a major event on their calendar.
So these devivals, are they basically like church services, but, SubGenius style? For you listeners wondering what that looks like.
That's a good way to put it. They're local gatherings, sometimes called clenches. You get sermons, music, art, all with that distinct flavor. And the name Devival is obviously a pun on Christian revivals.
Oh.
Leaders often take these crazy names and give these really intense, angry-sounding rants. And interestingly, a lot of these happen in bars or places like that. Some academics even call them temporary autonomous zones, places where normal rules just kind of go out the window for a bit. That's something for you to maybe consider, the idea of creating alternative social spaces.
Interesting. And the main X Day event itself, the big annual one, sounds like quite an experience. It's at a campground in Ohio, Wisteria. And it's described as an adventure and a survival test.
Yeah, it's deliberately meant to be a bit brutal, is the word they use, which is funny, right? Given the whole quest for slack.
Yeah, the ultimate ease.
Exactly. But the event itself involves stuff like mass baptisms,
Okay.
a costume ball, often with a theme like dead rock stars, the Bull Dada Bad Film Drive-In,
Little data.
the Loudest Yeti contest, mass eating events with names like Scrapple Toss and Pancake Orgy. It's a lot. Very eclectic.
Loudest Yeti contest. I need to hear that.
Me too. And just to add another layer of quirkiness, there's apparently a deal for SubGenie who want to go straight from X Day to the Starwood Festival, which is another sort of countercultural gathering.
Okay, so this is obviously a deep, strange world. For anyone listening who's intrigued and maybe wants to delve deeper, where would they even look beyond the book of the SubGenius? Surely there's more.
Oh, definitely. There's a whole library, so to speak. High Weirdness by Mail is a fascinating one. It's like a guide to all sorts of fringe culture from before the internet really took over.
Ah, a snapshot of a different era.
Exactly. Then you've got books like Three-Fisted Tales of Bob and Revelation X, the Bob Apocryphon. These really flesh out the mythology. And of course, the Stark Fist of Removal zine, the original source material. That's actually been reprinted, so you can still find it.
And what about now? In the digital age, they must have like a website or something, right?
Yeah.
For you tech folks listening.
Oh, absolutely. They've adapted. There's the Our Slack radio show, which is also a podcast now. It's been on college radio forever, it feels like.
The long runner.
Definitely. They even have a SubGenius TV channel on Roku, apparently. And their website, the subsite, they call it, is exactly what you'd expect. They describe it themselves as having a graphics orgy, sound holes, a software fun house.
Graphics orgy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just as kind of wonderfully chaotic and overloaded online as it seems to be offline.
It all sounds just incredibly weird, but also like deliberately weird, almost performatively so.
Yeah.
For listeners trying to make sense of it all, what's the general take from analysts or commentators? Is this just one giant, super elaborate, decades-long joke?
Well, the most common view among scholars is that, yes, it functions as a parody religion, and a pretty smart one. It's generally seen as poking fun at, well, a whole range of belief systems. Christianity, obviously, but also Scientology.
Scientology, how so?
Well, people point to similarities between their main god, Jehovah One, and Scientology's Xenu figure, for example. And they definitely lampoon things like televangelism and the whole prosperity gospel idea with their fake commercialism and the constant focus on getting slack. So for you, it's about seeing how they use that exaggeration to critique things.
So it's like they're holding up this funhouse mirror to established religions and sort of saying, see how absurd this can look.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Some academics argue that by mimicking and exaggerating all these religious tropes, they're actually undermining the whole idea of what makes a religion authentic. People have compared them to older groups too, like the ranters back in historical England who were known for being provocative, and also to more modern things like Discordianism, which also plays with chaos and absurdity. And this tactic of culture jamming, disrupting mainstream messages, that's seen as a core part of what they do. For you, it really shows satire being used as a kind of social commentary tool.
But the big question, I guess, for anyone trying to really get to the bottom of it, is it actually a religion, even a satirical one? Or is it ultimately just a prank, a very, very dedicated prank?
And that's really where the debate still is. Some folks argue that, yeah, for the people involved, it is a genuine belief system. It provides community, a way of seeing the world just through this very particular satirical filter. Others insist, nope, it's fundamentally a joke, however complex.
Has it faced criticism?
It has. Some criticism focuses on its heavy reliance on absurdity, maybe sometimes at the expense of clarity, and also how it handles criticism itself. And more recently, there have been some internal debates reported, particularly online, about inclusivity and the group's underlying message.
Ah, right. I saw some mention of controversy around fasci subgeni. What's that about?
Yeah, that seems to stem from online discussions, like on Reddit, where concerns are raised about individuals mixing subgenius aesthetics or language with actual far-right or fascist ideologies or even QAnon-related stuff. The sources suggest this sparked debate within the community.
So, like, people co-opting the weirdness for genuinely harmful stuff.
That seems to be the concern raised in those discussions. It touches on that tricky history, especially from the early internet days, of using ironic bigotry, which could sometimes mask or enable actual bigotry. The sources point out the inherent clash, though, between the generally anti-authoritarian, anti-establishment vibe, often associated with subgenius, and, well, fascism. It's presented as an ongoing tension or debate within the movement itself about what the church really stands for and who belongs. We're just reporting what the sources discuss here, of course.
Understood. Okay, so we've taken quite the journey into this wonderfully weird world of the Church of the Subgenius. After this deep dive, what are the main takeaways for us, for you listening?
Well, we've seen its strange beginnings, right? The central figure of Bob Dobbs, the whole elusive quest for Slack. We've looked at the really unique events like X Day, the chaos of the Devivals.
Right, the publications, the online stuff.
Exactly, and it's really complicated places, this parody religion that asks some pretty pointed questions about belief itself. And as we just touched on, it even grapples with its own internal debates about meaning and who gets to be part of it. For you, maybe it's a chance to see how satire can be used to, poke at society's sacred cows.
It really is this amazing mix, isn't it? Satire, pure pop culture, Cuisinarting, and this incredibly detailed mythology that seems almost aware of itself. It definitely makes you rethink what a belief system can even be.
It absolutely does. And maybe it leaves you, the listener, with some things to chew on. Like, what is it about humor, about satire, that lets these kinds of fringe movements catch on? How do they provide real meaning for some people?
Yeah, and how do they navigate things like irony and belief, especially now online where everything can be misinterpreted?
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, there's a tiny piece of Bob Dogs's particular brand of wisdom or maybe anti-wisdom in all this. Perhaps it pushes us all to think a little bit about our own search for,
Right.
well, for whatever our personal version of Slack might be.
Deep dive on PR Genius.